Now let's have a look at the while loop. The while loop is quite similar to the for loop in what it does, but you'll be pleased to hear that it's even simpler. So let's set up our first while loop. How it works is very similar in syntax to an if statement. We use the while command, we have some conditions in there, and then we put some command within curly brackets, just like an if statement. So let's say our condition is I is less than 6, and let's not forget our open PHP tag, and we've got to set a value for I before we start our while loop, that is. So in this case, the value we've set is 0, and we say while I is less than 6, we'll echo we'll use the same command as we did for the for loop. Now, at the end of our last movie, we learned about infinite loops. And here's an example of one. If we just left it like that, then that loop is just going to keep executing again and again and again and again, and there's no reason why I will ever be equal to or greater than 6. It will always be less than 6, and so this statement will just keep on executing forever. So what we need is something like that. Let's close our PHP tags, save this script, and let's see how that works. Exactly the same results as the for loop. Once again, you may be wondering why there seems to be different ways of doing very similar things. Well, different scripts call for different kinds of loop, and it's impossible to explain why there's a while loop and a for loop and other kinds of loops without looking at more complex examples, which we will do later on. But for now, it's important that you get familiar with all these kind of loops and try them out for yourself. Now there's another kind of loop, very similar to the while loop, which is called the do while loop. And how we do that, how we execute that, is we use the do command without any condition, and then we put our condition down here at the bottom with a while. So essentially we do these statements while this is true. Let's check this one out. Exactly the same. It does exactly the same thing. So you may be asking, quite reasonably, what's the difference? What's the point? Well, say if while started out as 32, what do we get then? We get 32. That's because we set the variable here, we get to the do statement, it carries out these commands, and then it checks the condition. Whereas with our while, our simple while loop, let's take this one off, that's the way our while loop is set up. Let's see how that manages with a starting value of 32 for I. We'll save that, and let's refresh this browser, and we get nothing. So what's the difference there? Let's take a look back at our script, and we'll see that I is set to 32, and then it gets straight to the condition while I is less than 6, and so it never carries this out, not even once. So the essential difference between the do while and the while loops is that the do loop will always carry out this at least once, whereas the while loop will only carry out this as many times as this is true. So that about wraps it up for while and do-while loops. And in our third and final movie for this chapter, we're going to look at escape commands.